and gentlemen, and all genders outside and in between, welcome back to Thirsty Work, the sex education podcast with a bit of a difference. Tonight we're going to be specifically talking about those genders outside and in between with Ser Goldie. Ooh, that's thirsty work. Without any further ado, allow me to bring in the beautiful Ser Goldie. Hello, you beautiful. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very, very well indeed. Very well indeed. I'm glad that you were telling me it was nice and hot where you are at the moment.
It's beautiful.
To be fair, it's quite beautiful here as well. I'm surprised. I was expecting it to be much chillier for much longer, you know. It's all good. But I've brought you on, you beautiful individual, because we've known each other for a long old time now.
We have. Pleasure.
I don't even know how long it's been. It's been a long time. It's been like you've just sort of appeared in my life. You're one of those people that I just feel like I've always known, and you've always been in my life, and I can't even think about where we originally came across each other or anything like that. So
I completely agree.
It's just been one of them things. It's one of those things. But I have also known you for a great period of your discovery of your gender and part of that journey, and it's been amazing to watch and amazing to see you really become yourself. So I really wanted to get you on. We've had non-binary individuals on the podcast before, but I feel like I'm comfortable enough with you, and I'd like to think you're comfortable enough with me to talk about your journey with discovering your gender and like the all of the ups and downs that have come with that.
For sure. Yes.
Is probably the way that I'm gonna describe it. So what point did you, like, was there a specific point where you were like, do you know what, this isn't right? Or was it like always a feeling of unease? Like, talk me through like what the situation was. How did you go about your journey of discovery, and where did it start? How did it begin?
I would love to say that there was a point where I went, this is wrong, everything's wrong, and I know exactly what I need to do to, move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it really wasn't. It was kind of this general feeling of unease that just sort of plagued me throughout most of my life. And I could never really put my finger on it. It was this feeling of being unfamiliar and uncomfortable in my own body, of, not feeling right, super feminine, definitely not feeling right, masculine as a kid. It scared me.
Mm-hmm.
The thought of like expressing myself as a masculine individual, which will come up a little bit later. But what did make me comfortable was in my childhood, and my teenage years, I was a competitive skier.
All right.
And we would wear these like compressive suits that like just kind of flattened everything down, made you very aerodynamic, and with like a helmet and a neck thing that was covering my face, I felt very androgynous, which I realize now. At the time, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm hot shit,
Mm-hmm.
But now I realize that was, kind of a form-fitting garment that shaped me more into the person I wanted to see myself as.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was this thing that just kind of sat with me for years. And when I was like, I think 17 years old, I came out to someone as trans.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, the most comfortable thing for me, previously as a child, the thought of being identified as male scared me.
Okay.
And then as I was 17, all of a sudden that became very appealing, but not quite right. And so I kind of started to immerse myself in culture, but was feeling it wasn't quite right. I was so happy for everyone getting top surgery, for going on T, but it always felt like things that were just kind of outside of my reach and outside of what was for me.
Just for people listening, T is testosterone, isn't it? That's
yes.
The medication, like to testosterone to accentuate the masculine parts of biology, shall we say? Because not everybody on T is on testosterone is trans masc, a trans man. Some are non-binary. Some are even actual like women and like cisgendered women or trans women, and there's reason for them to be on testosterone. There's a variety of different biological and medical reasons for that, but just so that we're clear about the fact that just because somebody has testosterone or is on some kind of testosterone medication does not make them trans. It does not mean they're non-binary, but it is a big part and parcel of a lot of people's trans journeys, should we say.
You're absolutely right. And thank you very much for making that distinction as well, because that's really important to know as well. And so that kind of led to me, deepening my vocabulary and my knowledge on queer culture and all of this kind of thing. And it's hard to really bring it down into a few sentences, but it moved quite fast from the period of me being like 17, 18, 19, where I went from being, I think I might be trans, to, oh shit, what's this word? Gender fluid. And gender fluid seemed to fit the bill a little bit more. But again, things didn't feel quite right. And I was kind of shifting in between things that felt kind of right, kind of not right. I was going from he, him pronouns and she, her pronouns, depending on the day. It was a very tumultuous time for my gender identity.
Yeah, what was your understanding? I suppose, like, was it just your discovery of the idea of being gender fluid, and what was your understanding of gender fluid at that time?
At that time, my understanding was simply that you can have two ends of a spectrum, whether that's masculine and feminine, whether that's the binary of male and female, whether that's I did have a pretty nuanced understanding of that being like two kind of sides of binary, and everything outside and in between, or not necessarily outside, but everything in between, flowing in between those two states. And for me, I just was like, I feel a little bit male, a little bit female, as far as my understanding of the gender binary was.
I mean,
very much developing.
Yeah, that is a very important thing, because it's I have also grown up understanding the gender binaries. Like, there was man and there was woman, there was boy and there was girl. But it's now in my life that I'm discovering that that's very much a Victorian Britain or very British view of the genders. And if you actually go into other cultures, especially native cultures that were colonized by Britain, there's a lot of genders. There's a lot of the first people of Americas. I've heard of certain people that recognize 6 genders, and the people in I can never remember the name of them, but there's a people in India where they are recognized as a third gender on top of the male and the female, and they used to be worshipped. And of course, Victorian Britain, with our colonization, absolutely quashed all that, because how dare anyone be different to the way that we are. But I think this is the reason why I've found gender, even though I'm feel very comfortable in my own body and being a cis man, I find the concept of gender and the exploration of gender so fascinating, because it's something that I was never brought up to explore. And I think it's one of those things that I find it amazing now to especially having been friends with you for so long, and seeing your exploration and see you become a more confident person in and of yourself, that it's so enlightening and amazing to me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I very much appreciate you saying that. But yeah, I was the same, right? Like, growing up, I wasn't exposed to genders outside of male and female until I started to kind of dive in deeper when I first initially thought I might be trans.
Mhm.
And so it was like this whole cornucopia of gender opened up in front of me, and I was overwhelmed with options and choices, and you can be this and you can be that and you can be this and that. And it was beautiful in a way, because all of a sudden I had all of these terms and ways of describing myself that I never dreamed could feel like home. And I know that labels have, you know, a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with labels. And my journey with gender has been quite label centric.
Mhm.
So that's why, you know, you'll see me kind of denote the chapters of journey of my journey by when I thought I was transgender, when I thought I was gender fluid, and then following that when I thought, fuck it, I'll never figure it out. I'll just be a queer woman. And because for me, a label wasn't just about, okay, these are like the requirements that I have to fill in order to be a valid person that's recognized by society. It was like, this is a community of people. These are the people with whom I can feel at home,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. It felt similar to choosing a name. It was like, oh, yes, this is how it feels like to refer to myself by something that fits. And I truly didn't find that label that fit until I was about 23. So we're in the middle of the pandemic. And I think it's no mystery to anyone that we all had a lot of time to ourselves. We had a lot of time to think, to reflect, to, you know, stop wearing the makeup that you didn't want to wear, stop dressing the way you didn't want to dress because you weren't around people. And for a lot of people, it was stopping putting on an act. And for me, that act was womanhood. And I actually saw a TikTok when I was 23 that said, "You do not have to be androgynous enough to be non-binary." And at the time, I was still identifying as a queer woman. I was like, I don't know what my gender is, and I'll never find the label that fits me. And just seeing that TikTok just made me weep. Just, you know, a 15-second video, if that, just all of a sudden unlocked something in me
Because
and
that's
just broke
that's
me.
so important as well. Like, because there is a preconception that if you are gender non-binary, you should be the perfect middle ground between man and woman. You are 50% male and 50% female, and therefore androgyny is your only form. And that's wild to me.
Yeah.
Especially if we accept the idea that gender is a concept. Gender is a made up concept that we as human beings have decided to put labels to, basically.
Mhm.
In order to understand biology, in order to understand different things, and evidently, as previously discussed, a whole load of different cultures have viewed those things differently throughout the entirety of history. But because of the way that we perceive it at the moment, and a lot of people definitely perceive gender non-binary to be a new thing. It's a new thing, and it's not. It's just a new label
No.
for a thing that's been around all the time. Therefore, it must be androgyny, and that I find absolutely fascinating. And that
Mhm.
was where was that the point which just opened the door? Like, I mean, you say you wept. Was that just like a realization, a penny drop moment?
It really was because, you know, I'd heard the term non-binary and, you know, things had kind of started to ping, but I went, "Oh, you know, I like my hair long sometimes." And like you know, my makeup that I do is too feminine. The way that I dress is too feminine. You know, I was like, I don't I don't hit the non-binary check boxes.
Yeah.
And that was just a really solid reminder that you don't have to. And going back to the whole label thing, you don't have to fit a label. It really is just something that's there to make you feel at home and to make you feel like you've found something with which you can identify.
Mm.
And I lost that along the way, I guess, until that opened that gate again for me. And things moved really quickly after that. I I realized pretty quickly a couple months afterwards that I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. And I very subtly one day on Discord changed my status to the non-binary pride flag in hearts. And then I came out to all of my friends at once as non-binary.
And what was their reaction?
It was overwhelmingly supportive. Like all of my friends, they were over the moon for me. They were so like it makes me emotional to think about the fact that I had and have people in my life that when I tell them something like that, just they were floored a little bit just by the surprise, but they were like, "Oh my god, this is incredible. Thank you so much for trusting me with this information. Um, we love you. We accept you." There were some questions to answer, of course, but it was just overwhelming support and positivity from my friends.
That's amazing because it has to be said, not everybody gets that. In fact, I'd say it's quite
No,
rare for that
no.
to be to have that level of security. But then is that potentially because you've always surrounded yourself with, or perhaps even because of the fact that you delved so deeply quite early on into the idea of being LGBTQIA, being part of the queer community, and therefore you were surrounding yourself with people who already understand a certain level of gender diversity and sexuality diversity, and even like a certain tolerance of things that even if they don't understand, they respect that kind of thing. Is that, yeah?
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's a baseline of you don't have to understand this necessarily to the fullest extent or whatever, but there does need to be a certain baseline of acceptance and and joy for people living their truest lives.
That's
You
amazing.
know,
I love that.
being able to take someone to a pride parade and share in that joy of people just celebrating love and truth.
Oh, I love that. It's melting my
Yeah.
little heart. Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Because it is, I think it's definitely, especially for some of like the older generation to get their head around, because our society, especially like the Western culture of society, has been, as previously mentioned, a lot of influence from colonial Britain, and our understanding of everyone must do what we say because we said it and that's the way it is, and we're Britain and therefore the best, and that has influenced so many other cultures, obviously with all the ones that we've colonized, but it's also influenced so much of our own culture. And the fact that I can't speak for other countries, but I can say in the UK, there's not all, but certainly a large proportion of British people who are definitely stuck in their ways, and they're just like, no, don't understand it, don't care to. And that's, as somebody who does surround myself with people like yourself, very, very open, honest, they're all on their own journeys, whether that be a sexuality journey, or whether that be a gender journey, or just whether it just be like a mental health, finding out where they fit in the world journey. Like, we've all got this dynamic of tolerance and understanding and asking questions and being respectful, and the fact that we're not going to understand everything, but it doesn't matter whether we understand everything or not. It's not about that. It's about turning around and being like, okay, they understand it, and if I appreciate them, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Have you?
It's the respect.
Yeah. And that is a big thing, especially when people are like, no, I'm going to use whatever pronouns I want for you. Fuck you. And it's like, well, that's not. This isn't about you sticking to your ways. This is about how much you respect me as a person. And have you had much experience with that in regards to like issues with pronouns, or issues with people of a narrow-minded disposition, shall we say?
Yeah, definitely. So specifically in my life, I had, someone very close to me who had, a negative reaction to me coming out. They just really could not understand me or why. I had to specifically ask them to use my preferred pronouns, and I was met with the kind of, okay, I'll try. Like,
That doesn't sound like they're going to try.
yeah, it was people that kind of make you feel like a burden for existing as you are.
That's horrible. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
our culture is designed to make us feel like a burden regardless. Never mind having that also put on
That's
us
the
by...
truth.
Like, it is. Like, I've talked about it many times in stream, but we do. Like the first thing that people do is apologize for things, especially in the Western world, but again, specifically Britain, Canada, I know has an issue with it as well. Is the first thing we will do if something's wrong, we'll apologize, and it's just like, why are we apologizing? Because we're immediately taught that whatever's going on, we must be the burden, we must be the one in the wrong. And it's one thing for society to bring us up to feel like that, and I'm sure there's a whole load of social political commentary that we could add in there, but it's another thing for somebody to feign willing whilst portraying this is going to be this is a problem for me to do that. This individual, and obviously you don't have to say who they were, were they with you through a lot of your journey of gender discovery, or was it like a relatively new thing?
They were with me for most of my journey, actually. They knew me from the age of about 15. So
Okay.
yeah, so they were there pretty much through all of the very intense highs and lows of the whole journey. And were pretty quiet through a lot of it, let's say.
Like, so
It was,
how was that, if you don't mind me asking? Like, how was that
yeah, of course.
in regards to, because like you've said before, like the dynamic was you first initially thought you were trans, and then you were like, okay, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm gender fluid, maybe it's something different in that, maybe I'm just a queer woman. That's all fine and dandy. Like, how was their reaction to each different step of this?
So for some context, this was an ex-partner of mine.
Okay.
And so this was very difficult for me. I and I also very much empathize that this was difficult for them as well, because it's difficult to go into a relationship with one idea of a person and find out that they are completely different, or whenever your expectations are not met,
Hmm.
it can be challenging for sure. And I don't want it to sound like it was a suck it up, you know, deal
Yeah.
with it no matter what. There was always love and patience. Um, for me, it was very difficult because they were my primary source of emotional support and
Mm.
stability, because we were together and we were together for so long. Um, they they just kind of they made me feel very alone with it sometimes. And I think if I had, like, it's it's a little bit difficult to talk about, but
That's all right. You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to by any stretch
yeah.
of imagination.
Don't worry, I am talking about these things because I want to, and I think it's good to. Um, there were a lot of times where I could have used that emotional support and stability that I was lacking. And perhaps the journey could have been a little bit more painless and smoother had I had a support system to fall back on, because for most of my journey, I had no queer community behind me because I was scared and unsure and also moving every 2 years.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it was really difficult to put it simply.
I can imagine
Lonely.
it was because, like you say, it's even if it's not like you turn around, you have these, you opened up to your friends and stuff, and they were super supportive, which is fantastic. But if the one person that you invest it is your emotional stability, or your anchor, shall we say, for
Mhm.
emotional stability, and they're trying their best to understand it, but not quite getting it, and not understanding how much, because it's a very emotional journey for you yourself to go through it, and that self discovery of not knowing where you fit, then thinking you fit somewhere, and then not knowing whether that's quite right, and then it sounds exhausting, to be quite honest with you. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's one of those things. I feel like the people that love us, and I'm sure that this person did love you, um, in that time, that they were doing their best, they just didn't get it. And I think that's
Yeah.
really important to say, is that just because somebody doesn't get it doesn't mean they're not trying.
I
Um,
think that's the key thing.
yeah, it's interesting and to hear, and quite heartbreaking as well, because it's like what we were saying about like the pronouns and disrespect and stuff like that. It's I'm trying to accept you for who you are and who you want to be, but I don't understand what you're going through, so it's hard for
Hmm.
me to give that kind of thing. Perhaps, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm kind
Yeah.
of rolling with an idea here, and hoping for
Yeah.
the best.
No, I definitely think you're right. And oh,
I've
lost your video.
lost my video, but we're all right. We're okay. We're back with
We're
it.
all
We're
right.
back with it. It's all right.
We're
This is a podcast.
all
No one
good.
can see it. It's fine.
They're here for our beautiful voices, not our
Oh
faces. My
yes,
goodness.
sultry tones, sultry tones.
Sultry dulcet tones.
And have
But
you, like, so have you been like in positions? Because I know that you say you've got an amazing supportive community. Were your family the same? Was that a similar scenario?
Yeah, so my family were more supportive than I expected. I had I was honestly just scared to come out to them. I had no idea how they'd react. When I first was going through the gender fluid stuff, I
Hmm.
made a long video coming out to them and like had a panic attack and deleted it because I was just so unsure about how they'd react. But when I told them, they were just kind of like, "Yeah, okay. Can we still call you you though?"
That's interesting. What did they mean by that?
They were wondering if you was still gender neutral.
Oh, right. Okay. I get you. I get you. You see, that's not where my mind went, because I've had conversations with people who have had like trans siblings, and they're like,
Mm.
I don't know how to feel about it anymore, because are they still my sibling, regardless of where they were
Mm.
transitioning? And I was like, they're still them. It's just they've realized something new about themselves now. It's not. It doesn't immediately erase all of the history you've had together. It's just that they've realized a very important part of their life now, and things are going to change going forward. But it doesn't stop them from being the person that you love, the sibling that you cherish or what have you. So when you were like,
No.
"Can we still call you you?" I was like, "Oh my lordy! Did they think you were going to transform into somebody completely different? What? What is
Surprise,
this?
you get a new surprise child.
Surprise, child!" I love this. I love this. That's amazing.
They've been great, and they've been very supportive, and were honestly a little heartbroken when I told them about the video that I had deleted. They said, I can't believe you ever thought you couldn't come to us with that. We want you to always feel like you can come to us with the truth about who you are. And pronouns are understandably a little bit of a challenge, because if you've gone your whole life never having to consider
Yeah.
using anything but he and she, it's obviously challenging,
Yeah.
especially when that person is someone that you've raised for 26 years, and well, at the time 24. um and you've never had to call them anything else but she, which
And that
is
is the difference, isn't it? That
understandable.
that is kind of like the difference between um like the where the boundary of respect lies. It's the, is this person doing it completely honestly out of mistake, because of sheer understanding and being used to a certain way of doing things, or are they doing it out of spite? And
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's where it is. It's like, are you doing it with malicious intent? In which case you're being disrespectful. If you're not doing it with
Exactly.
malicious intent, then as much as it must be, I mean, painful, is that the, I know that like I had conversations with Babbling Goat in season 1 of Thirsty Work, and we talked about pronouns and it being quite painful to be misgendered. Is it the same for you as non-binary?
For me personally, it's like a little twinge.
Mhm.
So it's not a crazy amount of pain. Maybe it's a little bit of being used to it, because I present fairly femme, so I get ma'amed and she's and heard quite often. So for me, it's just kind of a little bit of a
Yeah.
every now and then, just kind of a oh, because I know people aren't doing it out of malice. I know it's ignorance. So if it was out of malice, there would be genuine pain there,
Yeah.
or anger. But otherwise, it's just kind of a oh, all right, move on. Oh,
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Do you get the, because obviously with my explorations of like gender non-binary, and you've been across a variety of different countries as well, and I know that a lot of these different countries have gendered language in the regards that I like in German, like everything has a gender. Like it's a this is a plane. It's a male. It's they. Oh my god! It's D, der,
Is
and
das.
that's there we go. And you've got like the like everything's thing. Is it like that? Because I'm trying to think of the big thing that I find when trying to talk to people about being gender non-binary and other people being gender non-binary and stuff is them saying they them is a group of people. It's not an individual. Now, would you talk me through how you respond to that? Because I obviously have a response, but it'd be nice to know how you respond as a non-binary individual.
I mean, personally, I would say that grammatically, it's been used as a singular neutral for hundreds of years, if not longer, in the English language.
Mm-hmm.
Like this can be cited in text back hundreds of years. But aside from that, one of the most beautiful parts of human language is its ability to change and grow with the people that use it.
Mm-hmm.
And languages that don't change and grow, they die. So
it's true. We know
really,
a linguist.
we do know a linguist. So luckily, most people aren't so stubborn in the head to keep things on too long. But because I mean, if they are, some people just don't want to be talked to. They just want to be right. They want to make their point, and they want to move on.
Yeah.
But for most people, you can just kind of tell them that, hey, languages are growing and changing. The word LOL got added to the dictionary one
lol.
year, you know?
It's in there. I saw it. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
This is part of the actual official English language, and see how upset someone gets about that. You know, like languages all around the world are currently working on different ways to incorporate the gender non-binary into their language. Everyone's at different stages. When I was in Germany, no one was quite at a consensus on what to do. So everyone kind of had a different application. But it's a beautiful thing to witness. It can be frustrating as a non-binary person. I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here now.
No.
Beyond the response to the question.
Run with it, by all means.
Away I go. So I think it's genuinely, it can be frustrating as a non-binary person to not have the vocabulary in a language to express who you are. I'm learning Portuguese, for example, and I just kind of have to tell people, I'm non-binary. Please refer to me as masculine in your language, because that's what I prefer in gendered languages.
Okay.
Not necessarily for everyone. That's just for me. But with everything else, you get to witness it. You get to see people try things and throw things at the wall and see what sticks, and see these beautiful and sometimes horrifying constructions of sentences that look horrible, but they're evidences of linguistic evolution. And I think it's a really cool way to go through the world with fascination and wonder at how our language is growing.
Yeah.
Rather than this cynicism of, oh, you can't use a singular they, them. That doesn't work. That's so boring. Why would you choose to be boring?
It's also very interesting because, again, talking TikTok, I saw a TikTok. And it was literally just this individual. I'm not going to assume any genders. I don't know what gender they were, but they literally were sat there in a window and they were like, do you know what? The other day, I was in a car park and I found a wallet. So I picked the wallet up and I took it to. I opened it up to see who it belonged to. Realized they weren't around, so I took it over to the local shopping center. Handed it over and said that was where it was. Then they rang me and they were like, "Do you know what? I hear that you've got my wallet." I said, "Look, I don't have it anymore," but I handed it over to a person in the thing. And they had this whole story about how they'd found this wallet and how they were returning it to this person and all that stuff. And the whole way through, they used they, them pronouns and everything. Like, and then, like, literally at the end, they just went, "And now tell me you have an issue with they, them pronouns." And I was like, oh, snap. Like, this whole story, I was imagining a singular individual. The whole way through, I was like, oh my God. Like, it was definitely a person's wallet. It was definitely a person who rang them. It was definitely a person who came and found them, and they gave the wallet back and they got it all sorted. It was definitely an individual, but they used they, them pronouns the entire way through. And I was like, that is mind-blowing. I never even considered it before, but that was a real penny drop moment for me to be like, oh, shit, yeah, I'd never even considered this. Like, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great, right? When you realize just how much the brain does just kind of acknowledge it as acceptable.
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. It's a really interesting one because I think the brain is a fascinating. Obviously, the brain's a very, very fascinating concept, but on top of that, it's the more we think about something, the more difficult it becomes. I remember sat when I was fucking 12, 13, like literally sitting and thinking about. I think it was like the letter L. And how the letter L was weird because it sounded weird in the mouth. And the more I thought about it, the more it was weird. The more I moved my tongue, the weird shape that it made. Why is it 2 lines and then just 1 line? And the more I thought about it, the weirder it became. And I feel like that's kind of very similar in the talking about pronouns and talking about specifically they, them pronouns. It's that dynamic of the more you think about it, because it's the focus and you're consciously thinking about it. You're not subconsciously thinking or subconsciously accepting it. It's like, this is a conscious thought. I'm consciously using these pronouns to a conscious, and it's weird because it's a conscious thought that I'm using these pronouns. And whereas after a while, you kind of don't, you kind of get used to it. You know, it's just like, the less you think about it, the more easy it becomes, you know? Now, this is obviously a sex education podcast. So I know all of the wiggly shoulders that nobody who's listening to the podcast can actually see, but it's fine.
Implied.
So how has your journey with gender, both through the trans elements, the not the gender fluid elements, the queer woman elements, the and then finally the position you're at the moment, the non-binary side of things, how has that affected your view, your approach, your experiences with coital engagement?
Coital engagement.
Oh, yes.
Well, honestly, I would say that the two have been intrinsically linked. So I did a lot of reflection before coming on the podcast because this has obviously been a huge theme in my life. So there was a lot to kind of get down on paper and kind of distill into the distinct points in my life. It was a bit of a self-therapy session. And I did kind of realize that my personal sexual identity and my gender identity went hand in hand in terms of how they developed.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so when I was identifying as gender fluid, I found myself in a very like hypersexual state, but very undirected. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know how to get it. I was still very much just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck. But, you know, not literally, because shame, but I'm not into that in particular. That is
fair. You know, it's fair. Like you say, no shame. If the people are into that, that's fine.
Shame.
As long as it's all between consenting adults, it doesn't really matter. It's fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there was that. And then when I started to identify as a queer woman, everything kind of started to settle down a little bit, and not in a really good way. I had like less fulfilling sex life. I was a lot more passive about what I wanted. I was more passive about getting what I wanted, and I just kind of let things happen. You know, things ebbed and flowed, and I kind of went with them. And when things were really good, they were really good. And when they weren't, they weren't. And I was just kind of like, I guess that's life. And I guess that's my life and whatever. Okay. And
Okay.
it wasn't a terribly exciting place to be sexually. Um,
Do you think that was
Definitely.
possibly because of the acceptance? Because I know that you said earlier that it was like that you kind of just accepted that the label for you was going to be queer woman. Was that part and parcel of that, or do you feel like there might have been other aspects to it?
I think it was the acceptance, but when I say acceptance, I really mean deference because
Like a
I
resignation?
stopped, yeah,
Okay.
resignation,
Hmm.
because I stopped looking for myself and I stopped looking for the truth of who I was. And
Hmm.
I think, it's not necessarily that just like the gender journey and the sexual journey always go hand in hand, but I think taking care of yourself and making sure that your emotional well-being is being taken care of goes hand in hand with your sexual well-being as well.
Does.
And so the fact that I kind of stopped caring about this very big thing, this huge issue that was causing me a lot of distress, I just kind of chucked it on the back burner and was like, I'm not going to think about that anymore, was very telling for the rest of my life, including my sexuality. And as I moved on to discover the fact that I was non binary, all of a sudden, it was kind of it was kind of like a break in a lot of ways.
How so?
It was like not in terms of having a mental breakdown, but my whole perception of my life and what I wanted came into such sharp focus that I wasn't willing to accept where I was anymore.
Hmm.
I wasn't willing to accept certain aspects of my relationship. I wasn't willing to accept my deference of my gender. I wasn't willing to accept the fact that I wasn't fulfilled sexually. I wasn't willing to accept the fact that I wasn't happy in my life. And it all came into such sharp focus all at once, and it just caused everything to break. And I couldn't deny any of it any longer. So I was kind of just rushed headlong into dealing with all of it all at once, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does build up. I mean, realistically speaking, that's something that I think a lot of people deal with in so many different walks of life, within themselves. Is that the more that you try and, I don't want to say bury, because it's not. I suppose some of it's buried because we choose to bury it, and some of it's buried because we don't know how to deal with it at the time. But the more that we hide stuff away, or try to just become accustomed to something, or like the more it builds up inside us, and it builds and builds and builds, and then eventually it's just like you say, it's that break, it's that straw that broke the camel's back. That is just like, right, I can't keep going on like this. Like, this isn't me, this isn't the person that I want to be, this isn't the person that I ever thought I was, and I just need to, I need to be myself. um
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I know that feeling all too well. All too well.
Yeah.
Like, just in so many other different aspects, it's just like, do you know what? This isn't the person that I ever wanted to be. This isn't the dynamic and the life that I found for myself. And fortunately, I'm very happy, and I love the dynamics that, like, I'm all about pushing until you find something that works for you. But you have to keep pushing. until you
Yeah.
find that point. The acceptance doesn't work. It just builds up and builds up, and then eventually you're just like, oh, for fuck's sake. And like you say, that crack happens, and it all the floodgates open, and it all just piles straight out. And does that
Yeah.
like helped in regards to like where you are now? I'm imagining going from where you were when you identified as a queer woman to where you are now. There'll have been some massive changes, but also like some learnings and growth in that.
Definitely.
Was that hard to come accustomed to come to sort of acclimatize to?
Yeah, definitely. So after kind of the crack, we'll say,
Mhm.
everything happened very quickly. As I said, when I realized I was non-binary,
Mhm.
and it culminated in me essentially breaking up with my partner, moving out, moving to a different country, and completely starting my life over in terms of friends. Of course, I still had, my beautiful group of friends online. But in terms of any connections that I had physically, I moved to a city where I knew no one, um, and started over again. And there was a lot of learning and growth to do there. Um, but sexually, it was also the biggest liberation have ever experienced in my entire life, because not only was I taking advantage of what I wanted and going after what I felt like I needed in my life, but I was engaging in relationships where people saw me and accepted me and wanted me for who I am, and didn't see me as a woman and didn't want me to be a woman. I had my first experience where I heard someone talk about me and they used they them pronouns, and it was just like, it was the most surreal experience, because in the moment I was blindfolded and they were talking to someone else. and they were and they were just talking and um just using my correct pronouns, and I got totally taken out of the sexual mindset for a moment, just to be like, holy shit, these people see me as me. And it was this euphoria that made everything so much better, and has since, truly, because there's nothing like being with people who want you for you, whether you're trans, whether you're non-binary, whether you're cis. It's people who see you for who you are and are attracted to that and want to honor that and experience that. It's just, it's unlike anything I've ever felt.
There is, I have to say, as a cisgendered man, there is a certain level of envy I have for trans individuals, non-binary individuals, people that go through that difficult journey of self-discovery, because I've seen it happen quite a few times where somebody's finally found that moment where they're comfortable with themselves, they feel themselves, they feel like their body matches how they feel they should be. That moment where the people around them, like you say, is you're accepted for who you are, and there is a level of, like you say, euphoria, the joy, ecstasy that you feel in that moment that I'm jealous of as a hedonist, as somebody who thrives for pleasure and joy and happiness, and to have that moment and see it with other people. And the first thing that goes through my head is, how dare somebody try and take that away from you? Like, that's the first thing, but that's the defensive part of me that's like, leave my friends alone. But like there's still like a part of me that's like, I'm jealous, I'm envious, because I'm not gonna, like, either had it when I was too young and never remembered it, but I'm also so comfortable in myself that I'm never going to have that. And obviously this comes from struggle. This comes from building towards something with so much confusion and so much trials and tribulations and not understanding where you fit and trying so many different things and it all building up and building up and building up, and then having that little moment where it's just acceptance of you and yourself, acceptance of other people, just accepting you for yourself, and like having always been that, like I'm jealous of not gonna having experienced that, but I'm also very aware of how much privilege I have on that matter, because like the level of ecstasy is definitely born from the struggle of discovery.
Yeah,
it's probably the best way I can put it.
Wish I could bottle it and sell it.
Oh, that would be, you make a fortune that one. Jesus. And it's important to say at this point that like anybody that might be listening or watching it on the YouTubes, like, there is not everybody's going to have the same life experiences as you. Not everyone's going to have the same journey as you, and there'll be a lot of people that will. I suppose there'll be a lot of people that are on their own journey themselves, and a lot of people who know people who are on a journey, and it's important to know that every journey is individual. Is there any, like, I don't know, advice you would give to people on their own journey, and respectively people who know somebody who is on a journey of their own in regards to gender and what have you?
I think, well, one thing I would echo first, specifically for people who think that they are non-binary or are struggling somewhere along that pipeline, I would echo the whole, you do not have to be androgynous enough to be non-binary or genderqueer or gender fluid or any gender outside or in between. You do not have to be anything enough. Simply identifying as what you believe you are is enough. You are enough. But general advice would be, don't let anybody else tell you who you are. And don't let anybody tell you who you aren't. Which may sound very, very surface level, but people can tell a lot through their actions. People who may not respect pronouns, who may refuse to engage in certain kinds of conversations with you, are certain ways of telling you if you are or aren't valid. And don't listen to them, because you are, and everyone's on their own journey, and yours is beautiful, and you'll find your way. Just don't let anyone else get in the way of that.
It'll all be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, then it's not the end. You know?
Yeah.
That's what a beautiful.
I love that one.
Yeah, what a beautiful note to end on. I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. Goldie, you're exquisite as a human being. I have always loved and appreciated you, and I'm really glad that we have the friendship that we do have. It means a hell of a lot. It means a hell of a lot. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your experiences and sharing your life with us, and your journey. Goldie, do you want to give yourself a shout out?
Oh my.
Oh, you, yeah.
Oh my. Well, Valen, I just want to say I treasure you. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Well, I am Ser Goldie. I am a person on Twitch and other places. You can find me on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, all as Ser Goldie with an E instead of an I, SER Goldie. And yeah, hope to see you around.
for those people that are listening to the podcast and watching the YouTube, I will actually put all of the links of Ser Goldie in the descriptions. So if you would like to find more of Ser Goldie stuff, then by all means, head down to the descriptions and give them a click. Give them a click, you know.